Welcome to the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry, where we talk about anything and everything related to football. This week we have another episode. We are capping out our positional category series within Positions Explained. We are talking about what is a forward. So if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, we have 3 other episodes categorizing the other different positions that you can play on a football pitch or a soccer pitch. We have goalkeepers, we have defenders, we have midfielders, and then today we are talking about forwards. So forwards, Andrew's going to get into the definition of what a forward is in just a bit, but pretty much they play the most attacking position and they score goals in the attacking part of the pitch. It's simple as that. Before we get into this episode today, Andrew, what are you drinking? What are you sipping on?
We've got some green tea, some jasmine green tea to be specific. We talked last pod about teas and maybe honoring the Brits and those that enjoy. I know green tea is not from the UK, but drinking some tea to honor them. It's a nice refreshing break from morning coffee, which I've already had. So just drinking some green tea. Harry, what have you got in your cup?
I've got some aloe vera juice. So for those of you that don't know, aloe vera juice it's this very clear liquid. So aloe vera is a plant. When I was growing up, my mom grew it in the yard actually. And aloe vera, if you haven't seen it before, feel free to Google a photo of it. It's this very spiky plant. It looks like a cactus. I think it's in the same family of different cacti. And you can cut the leaves off or the flesh off and actually rub it on your, I guess, wounds or certain parts to heal them. I don't know. That's what my mom did. Maybe it's fake. But I think there is some healing properties to it. But the flesh of it, if you want to, you can make a drink out of it. Very tasty drink. It's like this sweet, but a little tangy, and it's kind of got a little pulp in it. I don't know if you could see it floating around within the camera right here, right? Yeah.
It's super good. Yeah, very soothing.
Mm-hmm. So you can make like smoothies out of it. You could drink it on its own. It's very, very refreshing. So if you haven't had an aloe vera drink, definitely try to check out an Asian supermarket near you, or maybe a store that's more of a specialty store that can carry aloe vera. Or a lot of markets nowadays, maybe more, I don't want to say upscale, but maybe not just your local corner store. Or maybe your local corner store will carry aloe vera drink. I feel like it's a lot more prevalent nowadays, depending on where you're listening to the Super Subs from, obviously. Maybe it's available, maybe it's not available. But with that being said, let's jump right into the topic of the day, what is a forward? So Andrew, take us forward. All right, I had to do that.
See what you did there.
Take us forward into today's episode. So what is a forward and why is it important in a team to make the team function?
Yeah, so forwards are, like you said earlier, really the ones in charge of helping to put the ball in the back of the net. So scoring the goals. That's what we traditionally know forwards for. So in its essence, it's the attacking position that receives the ball from the midfield. Sometimes even the defense, if it's a long ball or a long hit up the field. So the forward can contain either the striker or another player that assists the striker in scoring those goals. Oftentimes they are elusive and difficult to mark. So you've got a lot of either big physical players or really fast players. They have a lot of vision, technical skill, and creativity. A lot of the goals that you see strikers and forwards scoring these days are really incredible. You give them, half second or couple feet of space and they're going to hit that ball and, score some fantastic goals. And they either play on the wing or so on the sides of the field or in the middle of the field.
Exactly.
And so to break it down even further, there is the role of a false 9. So the number 9 that you see on the back of the jersey. So typically when we think of numbers on the back of the jerseys, actually, for those that aren't super familiar with the game, a lot of those numbers denote certain positions on the field.
Traditionally, right?
Traditionally, exactly. Yeah. So the number 9 traditionally has been the striker role. So the role that is up at the top of the pitch, the field, doesn't, really leave that area a lot and is really the one scoring a lot of the goals. So as we've evolutionized the game, there's now a role called the false nine. So it's like a fake nine. So it starts up front near the opposition goal, and they replace the traditional striker in most formations. So instead of having just a guy that sits up top, you've got a player that will sit up top, but also will drop deep to pull the opposition defenders out of position. So almost like creating this vacuum, bringing oppositional defenders with them to create space for other attacking field players, forwards, wingers, people to make runs into that space. And oftentimes they are a converted midfielder. So you can get guys that are technically playing midfield, but are playing this false nine role or have experience in both midfield and playing at the top of the pitch.
And Andrew, when you say drop deep, I think in terms of what that means, what is dropping deep, or what does the word deep in this context mean?
Yeah, so deep would be, I'm trying to like visualize this in my mind. Drop deep would be, sitting up either closer to, so drop deep closer to
closer
the opponent's
to
goal?
Closer to our goal. So in
To our
terms
goal,
of
yes.
in terms of a false nine, when Andrew says drop deep to pull defenders out of position. So imagine you're playing as a forward, and imagine you're playing in the forward line. When you drop deep, you're pretty much getting closer to your side of the pitch to bring the opposing defenders away from their goal. So you create this, exactly like Andrew said, you create this vacuum and you create this gap in their defensive half so that all of your attackers can start pretty much going into that space. It's like a Trojan horse. When you distract a lot of the defenders and you gift them a horse, oh my gosh, I'm going to chase after that thing because it looks like it's super enticing. That's what a false nine does. They bring all of these players with them, and then you don't notice everyone else just streaming into this gap and then being able to score. So when we're talking about deep, and this is one of the words we'll define in later pods as well.
Yeah.
Can be very confusing, absolutely, for sure. But when you drop deep, it just means you pull back a lot. So when you're attacking, you stay up top. But when you drop deep, you pull back, and that means you're pulling people with you, or you are, maybe if you're a deep lying playmaker, that's also a position that we covered last pod as a midfielder. When you're deep, you can ping balls from your side of the pitch, your half, or deep into your half to other people further up the pitch. So deep just means pretty much how far you are backwards towards your own goal.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Harry. I was
having
a bit of a brain fart there. For whatever reason, my mind went to American football, where to go deep means to go closer
to and that's the confusion as well.
Yeah, go towards the opposing end's touchdown zone.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. So that segues nicely though into the traditional number 9, the striker. So Harry, can you break that down for us?
Yeah. So exactly like Andrew talked about, being a forward, there's a few different positions. Andrew covered the false 9. Let's talk about a true 9. So true 9, false 9. So a striker is pretty much a player that adheres to the traditional definition of what a forward is. Pretty much a center forward. You're the closest player to the opponent's goal. You are responsible usually for scoring the goals, or at least playing the final ball so that someone does score a goal. And oftentimes you're pretty big and tall. You don't have to be. It's not a requirement, but there's this, I wouldn't say it's a myth, but I would say it definitely benefits, especially when you're trying to head the ball or use your physicality to pretty much push defenders off of you, because you're pretty much the furthest person up the field. So you want to be able to either hold the ball up and wave the defenders off so that the rest of your teammates can catch up with you, and then you could pass it off and they can score a goal. Or so your teammates can catch up with you, play the ball to you, and you can make the final run and score the goal. So usually there's a lot of players that fit that stereotype even today, even if it's not used as much. Andrew's going to talk about one of those machines in the Premier League. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but a striker really, gives the defenders a hard time, really physically strong, can be tall, doesn't have to be, but really that position is still pivotal to some teams today. Pretty much one example of a striker like that, the team that Andrew and I support, Manchester United, Wout Weghorst. I don't know why I said that with an accent. I probably
It sounded good. It sounded official.
Thank you. But I don't even know if that's correct. But Wout is a Dutch striker. He's 6'6", I think, or 6'7".
Oh, super tall.
He's a tree, and he's skinny as well. But he's good at what he does because he's so big and tall, and he can fight defenders off and hold the ball up. He's really good at this. Holding the ball up just means you keep the ball until your teammates can catch up with you, and then you play that pivotal pass so they can make a run onto goal. So that's what a striker is. In terms of another position, before we get into some famous forwards, there's a wide forward. So pretty much an example of a wide forward is someone that's also in the forward line, and forwards pretty much just means anyone in the attacking line in a formation. Wide forwards often play on the sides of the pitch and can dribble up the side or pretty much cut inside and play a pass or shoot. Examples of players like this is a player called Riyad Mahrez. He's a very tricky, and when we say tricky, it means you can trick the defense out, and the defense doesn't really know how to track you. He's a very technical, tricky player. And another example of this is Jadon Sancho. He's a player that played for Dortmund but plays for Manchester United as well, and he's having a little bit of a comeback right now. And then also Marcus Rashford. You may have heard this name, but he's also categorized as a wide or center forward, and he can cut inside from the left side, and he's really, really good at tricking defenders out with his pace as well as his technicality. So a lot of forwards nowadays, they don't have to play just one position. They can play out wide. They can play in the center as a false nine. So hopefully explaining these positions gives you as a listener a little bit more of an in-depth look into the position of a forward, not just you play up top, you receive the ball, but also there's different positions within that category. So why don't we go ahead and go to famous forwards now, Andrew? So would love for you to start it off. I know you have a list of forwards that you would love to talk about. So Andrew, kick us off. What famous forwards are there to mention today?
Well, I think it's only fitting and appropriate to start the list off with Pele. So I feel like Pele is a pretty household name, even if you're not a big football fan. For those that don't know, absolutely iconic Brazilian forward.
Yes.
He did pass fairly recently, so rest in peace, Pele. But between the 1960s and 70s, Pele traveled the world with his club team Santos and his national team Brazil. And what is absolutely incredible and almost hard to fathom is that he scored over 1,200 goals in his 22-year career.
1,200.
Oh, yeah, 1,200. It's so hard to fathom. And, he spent a little bit of time in the U.S. as well, playing some football, I believe, for the Cosmos. But, yeah, truly the king of football, Pele.
I just looked it up. 1,200 goals in 22 years is a little over 54 goals a year on average. That's just insane for Pele to be banging those in year after year.
Oh, yeah. It's unreal. To move on from there, another famous Brazilian player is Ronaldo 9, so R9, not the CR7 that we know today from Portugal, but Ronaldo 9. He was an incredible player, played for the Brazilian national team, as well as Real Madrid.
Yep.
And Harry touched upon, if you haven't listened to our Positions Explained, the midfield section, Harry talks a lot about David Beckham and playing these iconic balls up to Ronaldo 9 and Ronaldo 9 finishing. An amazing player, so talented. His touch was incredible. I just remember that. And his real Jogo Bonito, I'm sure I'm butchering that. The Portuguese way of saying, yeah, beautiful football. And he was truly the epitome of beautiful football.
Yeah.
Another iconic player is Didier Drogba. He was really well known for his time playing in England for Chelsea Football Club. Was part of those great teams coached by Jose Mourinho. He played along Frank Lampard, John Terry, Petr Cech, a lot of these big household names that we've talked about in previous podcasts, and truly a remarkable player. Won African Player of the Year a couple times. and just really an incredible player, really known for touch and finishing. His finishing was second to none when he was in his prime.
Yeah, and what does finishing mean, Andrew, in the context of being a forward?
Yeah, good question, Harry. So finishing means to get the ball into the back of the net. So yes. So basically, it's other people playing that ball to you, whether it's a headed ball, a ball in the air, ball on the ground, and your job is to make that last step and get that ball to the back of the net. So whether it's a shot, it's a tap in, which is just, getting a quick foot to the ball, redirecting it, header, really incredible player. Yeah. So the next two I've gotten my list are still active today, and they both have the link that they both played for Dortmund at different points in their careers. So Robert Lewandowski, Polish player, really well known for his time at Bayern Munich, absolute machine, a very typical striker that we see nowadays, very athletic, very tall, always seems to know where to be at the right time to finish those shots and put the ball in the back of the net. Prior to Bayern Munich, he played at Dortmund. I have great memories of watching him in 2013, playing alongside Marco Reus and Mario Götze, two other really famous German players. But now Robert Lewandowski plays his football in Spain for Barcelona. So really classic club. He's still doing great things, even though he is getting into his mid to late 30s. Still a really great player. And I would be remiss to not mention the next generation, Erling Haaland, a Norwegian powerhouse. He's very young, but he looks like a man-child, and I say that with the utmost respect.
He's going to come after you now, Haaland.
He will, and I am very scared of his run. When you see him take penalty kicks, it's shocking. He charges the ball with full speed and looks the keeper dead in the eyes and rifles the ball in. But he played prior to this season in Germany for Borussia Dortmund. Gained a lot of acclaim, scored an incredible amount of goals, and got traded to Manchester City this summer for a massive fee. There was a huge bidding war over who was going to land him, and a lot of people thought, he can't do it. The style of play in the German league is way different than the English league, but he has taken the Premier League by storm and has already scored more goals than the top goal scorer for last year, which is amazing, and is on track for a record, maybe not a record scoring season, but definitely a lot of goals. And a huge guy, great in the air, very coordinated for being such a tall player. And has this amazing vision of where to be at the right place at the right time. So amazing player, super fun to watch if you get the chance. Harry, I know you've got a couple on your list. Kick us off. What can you tell us about CR7?
Okay. So CR7, if you don't know, is the initials for Cristiano Ronaldo. His jersey number is usually 7. And so this player, nowadays, very divisive, I would say. Before, I would say very beloved and still beloved by a lot of fans around the world, whether it's because the hype of the siiiiu or because you adored watching him when he was coming from Sporting in Portugal all the way to Manchester United to Real Madrid to Juventus. These are all just different teams within the different leagues. So he went from Portugal to England to Spain and then to Italy and then back to England with Manchester United. Now he's playing at Al Nassr in the Saudi Arabian League, where he is probably playing his retirement football. But less about that, more about his glory days. So I would say Cristiano Ronaldo, you've definitely heard of his name. If you're listening to this pod, you've probably, widely acclaimed player. I will say one of the greats of all time. He's won so much there is to win in his career. He's even won an international trophy with Portugal, the Euros in 2016, 2018, somewhere around in the last 6 to 8 years. And this guy just is a goal-scoring machine. He is the original Haaland in Portuguese form, because he not only is he physically a specimen, but he's just got this drive to score goals at whatever cost. His left foot is good, his right foot is good, so he's right foot dominant, but only barely. So he could score with his left, right foot. His leaping height, his vertical is just insane, crazy, and he got really good at headers later into his career. And background about him, he actually converted as a winger, so he used to play in the midfield or in the forward position, a wide forward position on the left-hand side, and he cut inside a lot of times, and he used to do all these tricks with his feet and get fouled a lot, much like Neymar today. He was a Neymar type of player, and if you don't know who Neymar is, he's a Brazilian player known for his tricks and skills and getting the ball up the pitch. But he converted into pretty much a center forward, where he would take the ball, one touch, bam, into the goal, and he was just deadly in front of goal. So Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously just an incredible player. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, a very tall player, also in the mold of Erling Haaland. Very, very tall, I believe Swiss, from Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken.
Swedish.
Or Swedish, sorry. Sweden. Please don't kill me, Swiss or Swedish people. But, but he's, I think, is a black belt in some kind of martial art. So he's, wow. The reason that I say that is because he's very flexible. So there's this one goal he scored against England where he did an overhead kick or some kind of kick where he just kicked it from behind, way, way deep on the pitch into the goal, and the goalie had no chance. And he just scores these astounding goals where it looks like he's like pretty much taekwondo kicking the ball, right, Andrew? It's just insane.
It's insane.
So very, very good striker. Still plays to this day for AC Milan in the Italian league, and he's about 40, 41, so he's crazy for his age. Another striker or forward, his name's Thierry Henry. A lot of people actually put him as the greatest Premier League player of all time. So this guy could do it all. He was played for Arsenal Football Club, who are dominant this season, but when he played for them, they were also dominant back then, and he was just incredible goal scorer. He created chances, but he was just beautiful and flowing with his football. He's a French player, and he played just insanely well. He would have this style where the way that he would score goals is he would drive inside the box, take the ball. The defenders had no chance because he just shifted from left to right. He'd drive inside the box, and then he would actually open his body up and then shoot across the goal with his right foot, because it looked like he was shooting at what's called the near post, so the post that's nearer to you as the forward, but he would open his body up at the last minute and then shoot diagonally across, and then the goalkeeper would have no chance. And that was pretty much his signature move. Moving on to Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney is pretty much, when you see him, he actually debuted at the age of 16 for as a professional footballer, or maybe even earlier than that, around that age. So very young guy coming through, but he was almost like this pit bull of a player. And I don't mean this in a bad way. He was just insanely strong. He had this aggression about him as a forward, and he would just be able to score you goals no matter what he was doing. And his strength was insane. He could fight off defenders. And I remember this iconic goal against Manchester City where he scored an overhead kick, a bicycle kick, where the ball was over him and he kicked it. And he just had some incredible goals. His passing was phenomenal. He always said himself in interviews he wasn't too good at dribbling. He would leave that to other people, but he would always also find himself in the right positions at the right time. This is a theme that you'll actually often find Andrew and I saying about forwards. You have to find yourself in the right position at the right time to be a good forward, because when that ball's passed to you, as Andrew said early in the episode, the midfield passes the forward line the final ball to score. You have to be in the right position. It's all about pretty much predicting where the ball is going to be, where your teammates are going to be, and where you need to be in a position to score the best possible chance. And then finally, we get to Mbappe, who Kylian Mbappe, 24-year-old, plays for the French national team, has already won a World Cup, scored an insane amount of goals. He's young and he has so much development left to go. And Kylian Mbappe and Erling Haaland, like, Andrew talked about are two players that are going to lead the charge in the next generation of forwards actually bringing up the game. And actually, I don't want to leave out the GOAT of our generation, who is Lionel Messi. He plays in this sort of hybrid midfield and forward position, but he also plays for Paris Saint-Germain on the same team as Mbappe in the French league, and he's still scoring goals. He scored a great goal yesterday, and he led Argentina to a World Cup just this past year. And he can take the ball. He's more of a false nine, so he can take the ball, drop back, dribble, and then just score a goal out of nothing. So he's almost in this in-between midfield and forward where he can play both positions at once because he's that good. So definitely don't want to miss Messi. He's probably one of those players that will always be in every conversation from now on in terms of football. Andrew, let's talk our last topic about the evolution of a striker. So how did the striker change in history, and where is it going? Andrew, can you talk a little bit about strikers in general?
So it's interesting. We talked in a previous podcast about this player, Luka Modric, who is a Croatian player and plays his club football at Real Madrid. But it was really unusual because in December 2018, he became the first player since 2007 who wasn't a center forward to win the Ballon d'Or, which is largely seen as the best award for the best player of that calendar year.
Yep.
So that really just goes to show how important and how widely regarded forwards are in the modern game. So although he did win, it was pretty short hiatus because Lionel Messi ended up winning just 12 months later. So
the year after, yep.
Yeah, exactly. But that record of how many times the forward has won the Ballon d'Or really shows how it's really become soccer's totemic position. So, the player is tasked, the center forward, the forward in general, is tasked with all those ways of finishing that we talked about.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you could go down the whole list: smashing, prodding, heading, sweeping the ball in, really just getting the ball into the back of the net. And even, in 2018 at the World Cup in Russia, FIFA came out with a technical report, and they gave an explanation, which I thought was really good, about the changing nature of the center forward and their roles. So from an attacking position, from attacking perspective, the role of the traditional number 9 has become more challenging due to the limited space. So quick ball circulation can help to create space and overcome compact units. So we see a lot of this kind of ticky-tacky style of football where the ball is played a lot in tight spaces to create opportunities, to create more space. So forwards are also tasked with a lot of great technical skill as well.
Yeah. And Andrew, can you talk a little bit about why does there seem to be less space in today's game? A report came out in 2018. Seems like there's more limited space, and it's become more challenging for a traditional number 9, which we talked about earlier in the podcast, to actually perform their duties to score on goal because they don't have enough space to receive the ball. Why has that space evolved? Was there more space before, and is there less space today for number 9s to play around with the ball?
Yeah, so I think over time we've seen a lot of shifts in formations. The formation changes have really put more emphasis on defense and also these midfield positions that track back. So play a little bit deeper, come back, help out with defense. So for an opposing player, it's a lot more difficult now to have a lot of space to operate in. And I think one of the interesting things we talked about, and I talked about earlier, the false number 9. So a lot of Europe, and Europe is largely seen as the pinnacle of world football. If you play in the European League, you're largely seen to be playing the best football in the world. So a lot of their most influential forwards, one that comes to mind is Dusan Tadic. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name. He plays for the Dutch team Ajax, and he's also a Serbian player. But, he is a false number 9, so he's dropping deep. He's coming closer to his own goal to find space between the lines of the central midfielders and central defenders. And then he's able to quickly shift and move that ball forward, score goals, create opportunities. And it's funny, he has this quote, and it says, it's like a fake striker. I move everywhere with a little bit of a free roll, and I am very happy. So the false number 9 is getting a lot more ability and responsibility and freedom to really move around and create more space to operate. Harry, can you go into a little bit more about center forwards and this evolution that we're seeing in the striker position and the forward position?
Yeah. And just to tack on to what Andrew's saying, the reason that space is disappearing in the game today is because of this concept called pressing. And we're actually going to talk a lot about pressing in a later episode, but pressing at a very basic definition is when you press someone that currently has possession of the ball. So if you're pretty much a defender and a midfielder or a striker on the opposing team has the ball and they're coming towards you, if you press them, that means you go as close to them as possible to make them make a mistake or make them lose the ball. So nowadays in the modern game, a lot of players will swarm the person that has the ball to press from multiple angles so they don't have time and space in the ball. So space is actually disappearing more nowadays because teams are playing this high pressing, high tempo style of game, where before, historically, maybe forwards or midfielders weren't pressed as much because the defenders just wanted to sit back, defend their goal, and let the forwards come to them. So there's a different style of game playing nowadays, which is why center forwards may not get as much space. But what I want to talk about is, even with all this talk about false nines and needing to drop back as a forward to get the ball between the defense and the midfield of the opposing team to dribble up and score like Lionel Messi, there are still uses for the center forward. So there's a lot of people that are still very tall. Lewandowski, pretty much Benzema, who just won the Ballon d'Or, he's more of a center forward. He receives the ball in his attacking half or attacking third, and the football pitch can be divided into thirds sometimes, the midfield, the attacking third, defending third, in terms of your perspective. He receives the ball very high up on the pitch in the attacking part, and he scores. He usually doesn't drop back too much or dribble the ball. That's more of someone like a Messi or Mbappe, etc. So there are still a lot of goal scorers nowadays that just wait around the box and still finish the ball solely because they are so lethal. Like Andrew said, you give them an inch of space, you give them a little half second where you're right behind, they're going to score. So that's why these people are still super lethal. The reason that you won't see as many of them nowadays, though, as many traditional number 9s or center forwards, is there's two really big changes. One, teams are crossing the ball in less. So when we talk about a cross, again, we talked about this a lot in our midfield episode, last episode, because midfielders or wide midfielders cross the ball in a lot. Crossing the ball just means passing the ball or sending the ball into a specific area for a player to receive and make another pass or score. We see this a lot less because it's pretty much like a Hail Mary. Like the midfield player will pass the ball in and say, all right, whoever can get to it, score. But that's not a very guaranteed way or efficient way of scoring goals. And people have realized that now. So a lot of players will actually play through the midfield. So you'll connect the ball from the defense, you'll pass it to your midfielder, they'll carry it forward and play it on the ground in the middle of the pitch, or have these passes. Andrew said tiki-taka, which is a terminology that refers to very quick triangle passing on the ground and playing it forward in these very tight spaces to your false 9 or to your forward, and then they'll put the ball in. So crossing is a little less nowadays, not a lot less, but a little less because it's a little less accurate. And then secondly, forwards and strikers actually defend a lot more. So when we talk about pressing, forwards have to have the stamina and be able to run all around the pitch. When they lose the ball and the defender on the other team gets it, they are right on them, because if you're right on them as a striker or a forward, you can force them to lose the ball or turn over the ball, and then another one of your players or even yourself can regain the ball, drive up to the goal, and shoot. So a lot of players nowadays have to have that stamina. So you can't sit as far forward. You have to be a little further back and not necessarily play just the center forward role, but you have to run around and be able to hassle those defenders. And then finally, the formations have changed a little bit, so there's maybe only one forward in the front instead of two or three, etc. So a lot of teams use different formations, but that's a little bit about the evolution of the role as well. So really, that was our last topic. Forwards are obviously a very pivotal part of the game of football. They score the goals. They're very important. They get the limelight. They're pretty much like the jockey or the class jock of your high school. You're like waving the Letterman jacket, like, yeah, look at me, I've got all the accolades. But really, that's why they win all the awards, because you can't win games without scoring goals. And forwards, their whole job, and sometimes they even get bonuses based on if they score goals per game. If they score 1-2 goals per game, they get paid even more per game if they score the goals. So obviously, it's very important to score goals. Andrew, give us some final closing thoughts. What do you think the listener would want to know, just to cap it all off, in terms of a forward and what is a forward?
Forwards, like you said, they get a lot of the limelight. So they are those exciting players that are getting the ball into the back of the net, scoring, game winners, scoring tying goals. I'd really, recommend for the listener, and we can, list out some of those classic strikers that we put in our pod a little bit earlier on. We could put those in the description, and I'd really recommend, heading to YouTube and just watching some clips of these guys play. I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I won't watch, full game highlights. If I've missed the game, I will just watch the goals, because I am a sucker for goals and good goals in general. So I absolutely love it. It is, brings me so much joy. Ever since I was a kid, I had DVDs of top goals of the season. Used to watch guys like, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Thierry Henry, Rooney score these, amazing goals. So, yeah, they're just a lot of fun. People say football doesn't have enough goals. But when they do happen, they are so fun. And a lot of times they're scored by forwards. So, check out some of these guys. It'll bring so much entertainment.
And final thought from me, forwards really, they do get a lot of the limelight, but I would say one nuance to pay attention to are forwards that are really good at passing the ball as well. Because when you're a forward, sure, your whole goal, is to score a goal. But when you're a forward, if you keep the play going, as in you receive the ball, no one's next to you yet, no teammates are next to you. If you're good at defending off the defenders and waiting for the team to come to you and pass the ball off, that's a sign of a really, really good forward, because in terms of positioning where you are, where the team is, and you're really intelligent. You can make that decision within the blink of an eye when you're dead tired in the 90th minute of a game. So definitely pay attention to forwards that do that. So that was our episode of What is a Forward, and we are capping off just the general overarching explanations of all these different positions. We're actually going to dive a little bit deeper into these positions in some more specific episodes in the future. Don't miss next week's episode. We're probably going to get a little bit into the formation and some of the tactics. It's going to be, again, very high level overview. We're going to make it basic for all the listeners to understand if you're coming back into the game of football, or if it's the first time that you're listening to any of this. We're going to make it a little bit more digestible and palatable for you to listen to. But closing out, that was today's episode of the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry. Definitely don't miss our next episode. Follow us on the socials. Please rate us if you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on the streaming platforms. Definitely give us a DM as well if you want to chat with us. We are more than happy to have a conversation on anything basic or anything technical, and you might have more knowledge than us. So if you want to be a guest on our podcast, feel free to reach out as well, and we can set something up. But we are subbing out for now. Catch you on the next one.